Colorism is a discrimination amongst people based upon their skin pigmentation. The African American community allows itself to be divided between light skin and dark skin. This mentality has been passed down since slavery times and implemented in today's society. And it's at an all-time high with children being bullied for being too dark or light-skinned children being bullied for not being black enough. As we talk today, I want you to pay attention to how the men respond to the questions and how they answer for the experiences that they've had with colorism. Hello, everyone.
Hello. Hello. Hello.
So today we're going to venture in the realm of colorism amongst men, and we're going to see your experiences and opinions that coincide with it. Now, colorism is not just discrimination against one ethnic group. You can have a certain ethnic group discriminate against another ethnic group, like white people discriminating against black people based on skin tone. But we're just going to be focusing colorism within the African American community. So as a black female, I seldomly see men speaking up on colorism. I mostly see women speaking out on it. So as men, personally, do you think that if colorism was present in front of you, would you be able to detect it?
Yeah. I believe I would. Because of how I was brought up and how I was raised, and the different shades within my family. My mom, my sisters, everyone's very, very fair skinned. I'm my skin tone because of my father, because he's dark skinned. I've seen colorism within my own family, as far as the light skinned members, me being one of the dark skinned members, my hair not being super soft and curly like my sisters or my mother's or my grandfather's. So I've seen within my family colorism. Never perceived it to be negative, just, you're dark, you look just like your daddy. You're dark, you like your daddy, you look like that side of the family, that type of thing.
So. I see colorism. I don't know if I grew up with it more so than seeing it like just in school. I think children are more conscientious of complexion. They speak on it very, very, very openly. They're very open when it comes to what they see. They see a dark skinned person, you dark skinned. And that it's taught at home. But it's really the culture. And I've experienced colorism more so in school settings and in public settings more so than I did at home.
Yeah, I would say I've experienced colorism. I don't think I've necessarily, within the African American community, experienced it from a negative standpoint in terms of it being a hateful issue, pointing out the color of your skin. I have experienced it in other cultures, but not necessarily in the African American community from a negative standpoint.
Definitely experienced it in a home on one side of my family. My mom's side, a lot of them have just a lot of different shades. So just certain comments around what being light-skinned is. And you see it on different sides of the family. So on the side of the family that loves light-skinnedness, right? They would say something like, you're cuter than other girls. And on the side that, that doesn't have that trait, they're kind of like, you got the devil in you kind of comments or a situation like. It's just weird the way they think about it. On my father's side, everybody's extremely dark skinned, so it almost didn't exist. They didn't even talk about color of skin.
I would say my family just growing up definitely noticed colorism because we have different shades in our family. I think the most interesting story I heard was about my great grandmother from down in the South, that they had different thoughts about certain skin tones. And so some of my family, like extremely darker skin, she wouldn't want them to come out on certain days because of certain suspicious things that they had going on. And I was like, really? They would just tell me that. Like, yeah, just because he was darker, they felt like not superstitious because of skin color, certain things could occur. Never knew that was a thing. So more so way back when in those days. But other than that, I'd say my family's pretty good at loving everyone no matter what their shade is. Even in my household, lighter skin, darker skin, not a big issue.
so I'm glad you brought that up. Because in the summertime, when we were just in the beginning of our capstone, we had to do 2 interviews. And there's this woman, her name is Latava. She is personally in my African community, right? So we call her Sister Latava, right? And she is very strong, opinionated, and I love her to pieces, and she's known me since I was a child. So when I interviewed her about colorism and her views on it and how it was for her as a child, she told me a story about how every New Year, right, her family would have a light skin go around to every member of the family and greet them because it was the good luck for the rest of the year. That they would have to clean the house, they would have to do everything, so the lightest person in the family could come around to each household, all around wherever they lived at, and they would greet them for good luck, right?
Wow.
So, have you had any experiences like that in y'all family that you can remember or know of?
Yeah, I think that was my great-grandmother, because as you said that, it made me remember that was it. That's why she wouldn't want that cousin to come by at certain times of the year. Because he was one of the darker cousin family, and they wanted to have a light-skinned man for some reason.
It was a light-skinned
Light-skinned man. They wanted him to come to their door, so that was supposed to be a great thing. That was something, my family doesn't do that now, or even my generation at all, even a little before me, but my great-grandmother, they definitely believe that from being in the South.
Well, I've not necessarily experienced this. I know in the past, in the African American community, to like get into certain events and to be able to do certain activities, they used to have what was called the paper bag test. And so if you were darker than the paper bag, they would hold up the paper bag to the skin, and if you were darker than the paper bag, then obviously you couldn't participate. So it's been something that, colorism has been something that our community has had to deal with since the beginning of time.
Never experienced any of the superstition things like you just mentioned, but it was always because my great-grandmother was a white Jewish lady. She married the darkest black man she could find, and that's where my mother's side of the family came from. You know, even though a lot of my aunts and nieces and mom and sister, they're all very, very fair-skinned because of that blood lineage. And for some reason, they all have dated and or married darker men. My great-grandmother, she was as dark as a negative shot on a piece of film. My mother married my father, who is a dark-skinned guy, very, very dark-skinned. So my sister, as I think back to it, my sister's a year behind me. She's always dated dark-skinned guys. She's never dated. So, and my wife, 2 wives, my first wife passed, but my wives have all been darker skinned. So now that I think about it more, that, you know, that whole kind of in reverse. My great-grandmother wanted someone super dark, and we all ended up with someone dark or of the darker persuasion. So no superstitions, but I guess that has been passed down through my lineage.
Okay. So since you say that you were able to detect colorism, why don't you think that many men speak out on colorism as much as women do?
I mean, when we think about colorism, because it does stand on its own platform, but I think that there's elements that just kind of trumps it. You know, when we go outside, we deal with racism on a regular basis. So that even though colorism it does exist, you know, you have the prejudice and discrimination that comes with racism on a regular basis, and that's in our face every single day. So, you know, colorism tends to get overshadowed.
Okay, so bringing that up, so very seldom in my research I saw men speaking out on it, but when I did, it was about personal preference, like you said. There's always a debate that a dark-skinned man wants a light-skinned woman, and they just perceive light-skinned women over darker women in general. So there is a tweet. Don't make people feel guilty for their preferences, please. If he likes yellow bones, that's his thing. Don't cry colors. So based off of what he said, it seems like he's trying to say that colorism does not play a part in personal preference. I personally disagree, but what are your opinions on it?
I think colorism is a part of personal preference, but also I think it really has to do with intent. So when it comes to personal preference, some people may prefer a light-skinned person as opposed to a dark-skinned person, or vice versa, a dark-skinned person opposed to a light-skinned person. But just because that's what they're attracted to, not because I only date light-skinned women or I only date dark-skinned women. When it becomes a situation of I only, then there's something else going on. There's something else that's an issue. So yeah, colorism is a part of it, but intent makes it quote unquote okay or not okay. If that makes sense.
Right, yeah, I think colorism definitely plays a part in it. The question is, from your preference, is that an issue? Like if I like light-skinned women, that's what I like. If I like dark-skinned women, that's what I like. It becomes a problem when it becomes a negative, and it prevents someone from moving forward in some way, right? So, because as we grow up, those seeds that we see in the media in terms of fair skin, light skin, light is right, white is right, type of mindset, those types of seeds are implanted into our psyche at a very young age. As we watch media and commercials and TV shows and things of that nature, we see that. So that's going to be a part of our mindset, right? So that's going to be a part of our decision-making process. And I don't think that it's an issue if that's his preference, but like I said, when it becomes a negative and it is preventing someone from moving forward in some way, or it's hindering someone in some way, then that's when I think it becomes an issue.
Yeah, I do think colorism definitely plays a significant role in people's perspective all across the board. I think that the media do play a significant role in dropping those seeds that you're speaking on when it comes to complexion. I think that when individuals put forth the notion of saying I only date red bones or one particular complexion, then what they're doing is assuming that just that complexion all acts the same. And I think that that's an injustice. You know, so for you to sit up here and say that I prefer this complexion because they all act this way is putting yourself in a very different predicament. Yeah, because now you minimize your pool. You know what I'm saying? And it's just it's just you're not putting yourself in the best predicament to find true love, in all honesty.
When you say that, you touched on so many things, especially when you talked about people acting a certain way just because they look a certain way. And so that means for some people, they put, okay, well this shade acts like this, maybe like they're a little softer. And then somebody else who's a little darker, maybe a little rougher, from male or female. And then if you limit yourself, like you said, then what happens when what you like don't like you? I was like, when we think about it, and then you stuck, so you're gonna be alone forever. And most people won't do that, but it just brings forth a lot of different things to think about. Colorism definitely is real. It comes up a lot in social media. I would just imagine us to think about whose poster we had up on our walls as younger men. Who we'll be looking at on, if you looked at Jet Magazine, who was the beauty of the week that you liked the most. And think about as far as colorism in that nature. I think about my family. I have so many shades. Mentioned before, I have 10 sisters, all different shades. Ended up marrying a beautiful woman who just happens to be light-skinned with hazel eyes. It wasn't that I said, only a light-skinned, hazel-eyed woman will I marry one day. I was just blessed to have it happen that way. So it does affect individuals. We just have to make sure, and preference is fine. As long as our preference isn't, as you mentioned, putting someone else down, treating them badly.
Yeah. I think we also got to look at what has colorism caused versus what is colorism, right? So I think with this tweet, colorism has caused this tweet, right? You didn't say that I defend, I have to have this type of woman, right? Versus is he taking away, like the brother said, is he taking away this opportunity? Think of like what they allege Future did. They're saying that he didn't let a full-figured woman into a club because of her size. Well, he's taking away her opportunity to have a good time that night. And so he's definitely got some bias or some prejudice towards that young lady. But in this respect, I would say the prejudice only hurts one person, and that is the person themselves. So I would say colorism is causing this train of thought, which is a problem. I don't know if it's being colorist.
Okay. So very seldom in my research, I saw that men spoke out on colorism, right? And during their personal preference, they always talked about it in the debate between light over dark. And so what about when it's perpetuated in TV shows and movies, right? And you always see a light-skinned woman with a dark-skinned man on TV, and then their children are all mixed. It's never like just one shade of a family. Now, these are movies like The Baggage Claim, I think it is. TV shows like Martin, The Proud Family, which is a cartoon that I grew up with. Now, one movie I can say, Us, the new movie that came out that's supposed to be like a horror movie, that,
Like the first time.
right, that is a first movie that they all look alike. Not just because they're all dark skinned, but like they can be all dark skinned or all light skinned regardless, but it's just a one color skin tone family. And so, like, what about how that's perpetuated in society today?
Well, perfect example. We're all around the same generation. The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Right.
Dark skin Aunt Viv.
Oh yeah, they killed
Was
her
gone,
off.
and she was gone,
Yeah,
and
she
they bought
was
it.
gone.
And
Like,
they killed her off. It was a contract dispute.
Yeah.
And then when it came time to put the new Aunt Viv in, she was light skinned.
Right.
And Will Smith made sure on one of the episodes to like look directly at the camera, like, okay, yeah, there has been a change, type of thing.
Yeah.
So why did they go from the dark skinned Aunt Viv to the light skinned Aunt Viv? Well, in reading the backstory about what happened, and even on the show, dark skinned Aunt Viv was real sassy.
Yeah,
She was real aggressive.
She was.
Light skinned Aunt Viv was real mellow. Oh, Phil, you know, that type of thing. So it softened up the show a little bit, you know what I mean? And that was interesting. And coming up, we always just say, well, I like the dark skinned Aunt Viv much better because she was more like my grandmother, like my mother, real aggressive, you know, a real person. So I definitely think in that case right there, I don't know if it was at the behest of Will or whoever the other producers were, but you saw colorism at its finest right there. It went from dark skinned Aunt Viv to what's the lady's name? I can't remember the new the one that replaced her, but it went to her. They were two totally different characteristics.
I mean, it is. I mean, it is perpetuated. You don't see the same complexions across the board when you're looking at. I mean, when you look at African Americans being portrayed in the media, it's never a positive light. It's not really a positive entity. Even this new movie that's coming up, Us, with the same complexion. I do love what he is doing with the movies. He did the Get Out. Now he's doing Us. He had to use a suspenseful thriller in order to even have that premise. Hold his own stand. I mean, like you say the dark skin are deemed as more aggressive. So he kind of used that concept. You look at dark skins being aggressive, and he used that kind of thriller, the scheme, to really be able to do what is not being done.
Right.
And to normalize it. And however you need to normalize it to make it normal, do it. I commend all individuals that think outside of the box and allow things to be done that are not normally done.
Right.
You know? But it is perpetuated in a negative way.
Sticking with the theme on media, if you think of even Uncle Phil in The Fresh Prince, right? Uncle Phil's a successful lawyer, he's a judge, right? At some point in the show, he's light-skinned. When you think of the Jeffersons and you're moving on up, you know, George Jefferson is light-skinned, but then on the flip side, when we talking about good times, they're all dark-skinned, right? They're poor, they're living in Cabrini Green. And so when we look at colorism, it's played out in that. And I think the thing that we need to move towards is forgetting about color. Like you said, we're progressive and looking at people as they are, right? We look at, in the African American community, looking at people as Africans, as opposed to a certain color, and just loving on everybody, because we all have value regardless of our color, and stop using what has been passed down to us, through us, from Europeanized culture to determine what's beautiful.
So colorism in the media, I'm in marketing. So what we see is, number one, what is acceptable, widely acceptable in society, right? So that's why we want to have different colors, because we feel comfortable with maybe the white man and the fair-skinned black woman and then the mixed children, right? In society, that makes us feel good. So it's an acceptable thing. But then the other side of the coin to that is that we're trying to, from a marketability standpoint, we are trying to reach a broader, wider audience. And so now everybody in corporate America is talking about diversity, right? That's the new buzzword, diversity and inclusion. So what we're trying to do is make sure that we are representing everybody in society, but we also want to make sure that we feel good in doing it.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what you see perpetuated in the media, in TV shows, and in movies nowadays, in terms of trying to reach a wide audience, but making sure that we don't offend the standard audience, or the regular audience that comes out and spends their money with us and supports us.
As you were always talking about shows, I was trying to think of a show that was more balanced as far as tone and color. Wow, and it took me a while to actually think about one. I can remember, I don't know if anybody else remembers the show, Moesha, Star Brand.
Yeah.
That's the most one where I saw everyone as far as shade. It was very similar. Dad, you know, he was, I want to say car salesman, owned car dealership. So pretty successful. Mom, college professor, and actually got a higher role there. I think she was like a dean for a while too. And that was one of the shows, was like, okay, whole family. And colorism really wasn't, okay, now dad has to be real light skinned, or mom has to be real light. It was just a balanced family.
Yeah.
And then thinking about it, I don't remember how, I know it was popular amongst me and my family and friends, people that I knew, but outside of the folks in my bracket and schools and things like that, I wonder how far reaching it went as far as comparing to other shows where those distinct differences were there. It just makes me think about it. I wonder.
Okay, so taking personal preference and media influences out of the equation, as men, as black men, have y'all personally experienced colorism or seen it firsthand?
I experienced colorism when I was younger, in the 80s. I was born in 1970, so I was a teenager, 83 on up. So between 83 and 90, the girls that went to my high school, that's when Al B. Shore was. Christopher Williams.
That's what Christopher.
You know, that's when the light-skinned singers were huge. The Barge. And all those guys. And all the girls in my small high school wanted light-skinned guys, and we didn't get dates. I'm not super dark, but I wasn't light-skinned. I wasn't what we call high yellow back in the day. So I experienced it then, but then the 80s switched to the mid-90s, and then Wesley Snipes and Tyrese and all the darker skinned brothers came in style, and we haven't given up the throne since. So you know, I experienced it when I was younger, but not since leaving my teenage years.
Yeah, and the only point I would make, I would echo that. Like, I couldn't wait till the light-skinned brothers were out, you know. The 90s hit, and like Carp said, ever since then, it's kind of been a little bit of balance. Like, everybody, it's kind of, everybody's kind of being accepted right now, right? But we couldn't wait for the 90s to hit, and we've been riding that wave ever since. So.
You know, when I sit back and I think about it, because I'm an 80s baby, so I wasn't born in the 70s. So my brother is a 70s baby. He's light skinned. So when we was growing up, he was the pretty boy. You know what I'm saying? So all the girls like Johnny, you know, like that's for Johnny, you know. But it's weird because, you know, like when I started, in high school, you know, that's when it shifted, you know. So it wasn't like the light skinned guy was in. It was the dark skin. They wanted tall, dark, and handsome. You know, so. But I got a lot of kickback when it comes to colorism from, you know, just playing regular sports outside. So if I would go play, it was a game called Down Man, and that's a game where it's like football. It's like 33. Basketball is 33. Everybody for themselves. But they playing basketball. Down Man is the football version. Every person for themselves. You throw the ball up, wherever you get it, gotta get a touchdown and get it was a fun game. But you know, you gotta prove yourself on the football field or on the basketball field because you know you are tall, you dark skinned, and you got called everything but your name, you dark baby, you nappy headed boy, you know, anything to just rattle you. But once you solidify yourself as a player, then you establish yourself in the community. Like, he good, you know. But that's how colorism does play a small role in getting over those barriers. So I can say, yeah, I experienced it in that regard.
Alright. So in the beginning, I asked you guys if you think that you would be able to detect colorism. So this is a scenario to see if y'all actually think that if this is a form of colorism, and if it is, if y'all can actually detect to see where colorism is present. So in my research, the author's last name is Dyson. He wrote an article about Stephen Curry. He's a light-skinned, a very light-skinned, high yellow, as I said, basketball player, and he's famous. And he wrote about colorism, how his skin tone was a bit controversial, not only within the black community, but for white people also, and why he got it famous in the beginning. So, as I read, based upon what Dyson says about Curry and the other basketball players that he interviews, see if this is a form of colorism. So, Dyson says, there is little question that Curry's skin has inflamed, a racial wound that may be invisible to folk outside of the culture, the plague of colorism or skin tone that has yet to be conquered. Curry's light skin and its relation to, some would argue, the crucial reason for his broad cultural appeal has not gone unnoticed. And this is now the interview between Dyson, Durant, and Harden is also mentioning this also. So Durant said, I thought he was white. He was this yellow kid, right? I'm just being real right now. Where I come from, in the hood, we don't see that. We don't see light-skinned guys around. It was all guys like me. And then Dyson says after his interview, as the darker-skinned Durant told the story, Curry was engulfed in goggles as he rested his left hand on Harden's back, who was bent over in laughter. There was clearly no offense meant or taken. Still, there is a premise or two suppressed in the logic of Durant's remarks. First, hood and dark imply an inverse relation to light and suburban, or somewhere that is definitely not ghetto. So what Dyson was really trying to get at is that because Curry was so light-skinned, focusing on the views between the African-American players, Durant being a dark-skinned player and Harden being a dark-skinned player, it was difficult for them and surprising for them to see that Curry is so good at what he does, being so light-skinned. Because light-skinned, even though perceived as better for men specifically, is perceived to be weaker than dark-skinned men. In that scenario, is there colorism?
The colorism exists in the fact that, I mean, you just stated it, they perceive Steph to be softer, not as tough, not as down, not as supposedly not going to be as good because he was light-skinned. Meaning, if he's light-skinned, he didn't go through what we went through, he's not as tough as we are, we're dark-skinned, we've had it harder. And again, that can be traced all the way back to the days of slavery, where the slaves, the field hands were all darker, and they were out in the field working, they had it tough. The lighter-skinned slaves would work in the house, and you know, they would have a easier time of it. They weren't baking out in the sun 24/7. I think that mentality all comes from that, and it's something that's ingrained in everyone. It's just a matter of, does it manifest in you? Do you subscribe to it, or do you realize you're actually subscribing to it? You may not be purposefully subscribing to it,
Right.
but you may be, just because it's ingrained. We've been talking about seeds that have been implanted in our psyche. It's there. You just can't let it control you. And if you control your thoughts, and if you recognize that, you got to try to do something to change it, because you can be as light as this paper and be a baller. You can be as dark as the top of this and be terrible. They don't correlate. It doesn't match. But because of the way we were brought up, the way we've grown up, to say that somebody because they're light skinned, so their talent is not good, well, that doesn't hold true when you look at the analytics. That doesn't come out that way. So
Yeah, so it's really all about perception, right? It typically in society, in our minds, we say, oh, he's dark skinned, so he's athletic, right? He's gonna be athletic, he can run fast, he can jump high, he's tough, he's physical, he's aggressive. Oh, he's light skinned, he's probably not as athletic, right? He's probably a little bit more passive, he's not tough, he's not physically aggressive, so he's gonna lay back. And so I think the statement was more matter-of-factly, like that's just what we observe in our community. Growing up, this is just what we see. And so that's typically what you're gonna hear come from people, because like Carpenter said, those are seeds that have been planted in you from a young age, right? And so it's just really my perception on things. It doesn't make it right. It doesn't necessarily make it wrong. It's just a matter of fact. This is my view. This is really my opinion of the situation.
Yeah. I think that when you say Dyson, is that Michael Eric Dyson?
Yes, that's.
So I think he's light skinned. So I wonder how colorism has affected him to even explore this issue the way he has. But I would say when I think about, it's clear that Durant has been affected by colorism, right? Because he's, in my opinion, he's questioning like you say, is Steph soft? Is he from the hood like me? He's not, because he's light skinned. So he's clearly has a perception of Steph, but it's just a perception, and he's not actually affecting outcomes for Stephen Curry. So in that sense, I believe it's not colorism, but I do believe Durant has been negatively impacted by colorism in his community. The other thing is even when you think of the Warriors, I think there also might be some feelings towards the Warriors. I remember when they won their first championship, people called them Team Light Skin. You got Sean Livingston on that team, Klay Thompson, Steph Curry. And so it was just people couldn't wait to see him lose, right? Because it was just hey man, these guys, we got to get light skinned brothers out here, because we're in danger of going out of style again. But yeah, so I think Durant has been definitely negatively impacted by colorism. It's affecting how he views Steph Curry.
I would say so many things there, just thinking about that, because there's also a height and weight differential. So you think of dark and muscular and tall. Steph is definitely short, very much lighter. I want to say Kevin Durant's maybe 7 feet, 6'11", somewhere around there. Steph's maybe 6'4", but still just doing everything so well. Now they're even teammates, which is ironic even from the article back then. But it is, again, socioeconomic status as well. Steph's dad played in the NBA, so it's definitely not a hood type life. It looks different, and I'm sure that's something that may have been laced in the midst of the conversation that they were having, even though it was a joke. And what I found out is 70% of a joke, there's some truth in it. And so that's there as well. But I don't think they, quote unquote, meant harm by it. They were just saying the fact it's so unseen and unheard. And we think about the dominant players, the ones who were running the league, a lot of them were darker skinned. Jordan, darker skinned guy. The person that came after him, if you think about it, either Shaq or Kobe. Shaq, 7'1", darker skinned guy, dominant over everyone.
The biggest.
You think about Kobe, a little bit lighter skinned than Shaq, but darker skinned guy, killing the league, everyone. And then even after that, who's the now heir apparent? LeBron. 6'8", listed 250, maybe really 270.
all muscle.
Yeah, all muscle, run a bigger, darker skinned guy. And so you have Durant and Harden looking at, okay, this is what usually runs our league. Now you have someone definitely not as big, not as strong, who is doing things that only someone of a certain size was doing at a point. So it's almost looking at it, say, okay, this is just weird. Like, it don't even make sense that he's able to do this.
Right.
He can't push us around, but he can sure dribble around us and shoot over us. And he shoot from half court and doing all these things. So it's like, I didn't even see stuff like this growing up.
Right.
So it's almost a phenomenon in the midst of the conversation. For real?
You had named all the type of people that NBA players usually are, big, tall, and dark. So do y'all think that since the white man chooses what to put out into society, do you think that that affects the way that black people perpetuate colorism?
I believe so, definitely. I think that we have colorism in our society because of what the people who controlled society, and still kind of do, white people, what they believe to be acceptable, what they believe to be beautiful, what they believe to not be beautiful. They obviously prefer lighter skinned black people over darker skinned black people. They obviously prefer to categorize a darker skinned big man as aggressive because they were afraid of that. It wasn't appealing to them. Whereas a smaller fair skinned man is not a threat to them. So, you know, we were talking a few minutes ago. Something I'm about to try to stop doing when it comes to my twins. I've got a lighter tone skinned son that's a twin that's with gray eyes, and I've got a darker skinned twin that doesn't have gray eyes. And I identify them as such, as opposed to calling them by their names when I talk to other people or when I'm playing with them in the house.
Okay, so you two actually introduced my last question. So as a black man, what do you think the community could do to end the cycle of colorism? So, fine.
For me, I would say it's got to start at home. It's got to start with if each parent starts at home with their children, let them know that you know, it doesn't matter what shade you are. We're all who we are. We're all one community. We're all the same. It doesn't matter if you're light skinned, dark skinned, or somewhere in between. And then allow them to have that pride of, you know, I'm an African American. The color of my skin doesn't matter. I shouldn't get treated any better or any worse because of how light I am or how dark I am. And if we take care of that in our homes, it will start to spread throughout the community. You know, you just talked about having a foundation to stand on as far as nationally, doing that across the board nationally, everybody coming together, having pride in who we are, where we're from, what we're all about, learn who we are, where we're from, what we're all about, so that you can stand on pride of that as opposed to what was done to us, which was we were led to not know anything about where we were from, so we would have no pride, and so that we would have nothing to stand on, no foundation, and people are just now finding out who they are. I did 23andMe DNA testing to find out I'm 80% West African. No clue. You know, I do know that my grandmother was a white Jewish lady. That's all I knew from the story. So my wife got me a birthday gift. I did it. Found out that I'm 80% West African. And that other 20%, it's a little bit of everything up in there.
Right.
But I stood up. My shoulders were back a little bit further to understand that I was 80% West African. I never knew that before. So I think the more we become aware, the better off we'll be.
Yeah, and I would echo that sentiment. I mean, the first thing that I would say is that we've got to get comfortable in the skin that we're in, right? And like Ron said, it starts at home. As we raise our children, we have to get them to understand who they are and whose they are, right? If you believe in God, first of all, you understand that you're a child of God, right? That I'm a black man, I'm a child of God, I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a business owner, I'm a coach, and just embrace who it is that you are. As me and my wife have tried to raise our 4 children, they've been in situations where they've been around all black, and they've been in situations where they've been around in all white. And what you want them to be able to do is survive in any of those scenarios that they're in. And how do we do that? Well, you have to understand who you are first and foremost. You'll get an understanding of how you fit into society. based on that. And so for me, like I said, I think it starts at home as us as parents. And I think that it's a great idea to understand what your lineage is, your heritage, where you come from, where your people are from, or you part this or you part that, or you from West Africa, East Africa, South, it doesn't matter. I think that all of those things really play a part into who you are and really understanding who you are, and they just make you a better overall person. And so it's never an easy job, but as long as we can embrace the skin that we're in, who we are, who God has made us to be, and how that plays a bigger role in society, I think that will allow us to start to move in the right direction.
Well, it was very hard to follow you all when you say all those amazing things. I definitely agree with all that I've heard. Actually, I'm thinking like one of my younger brother-in-laws, he actually did an Ancestry.org thing, and he learned so much about the whole family heritage. On the last Sunday in February, my pastor, he mentioned this. They didn't take slaves from Africa. They took doctors, they took lawyers, they took engineers. And all these individuals left with skills and things that were very useful, and then they turned them into slaves here. To end that colorism, which you all mentioned, starts at home. It has to start at home. You know, telling them what the truth is, teaching them about our ancestors, as much as you know about the family personally, and then as much as you can learn about all those that look like them, and let them know we all are one, and we have to love each other as that, and affirming them in who they are. Let them know whoever they want to be, they can be. And that's the goal that will stop colorism or help improve it. Because it may never be 100% gone.
Right.
But the best thing we can do is implement a great influence in those that we have an impact on. Everyone at this table has an impact and is influence on someone. And if we give what we can to those that we influence, I truly believe it'll make the world a better place.
That's it. Yeah, that's it.
But I want to add one more thing. I think all things that was said on this table was validated by experience, without a question. You know, one of the things that I do notice when I go into the black community, I live in an African American community myself. You know, I go to stores and I'm not just mindful on how I'm treated. I'm mindful on how they treat individuals that comes in before me and even after me. And one thing that I do think that we as an African community needs to do is we need to hold individuals that have businesses in our community accountable
Yes.
to respecting us,
Yeah,
treating us with dignity.
absolutely.
With you taking our money, but you kicking us in our butt.
Yeah.
You know, that I think needs to be implemented first. I think once we hold them accountable and we don't allow individuals to come into our community and mistreat each other, then we can move forward in a good direction too.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
All right, guys, this was really successful, and all of your comments and experiences were really insightful. I'm glad that I was finally able to get the man's point of view on colorism, and I really thank you all for coming and helping me support my capstone.
Thank you.
And for those who are watching, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, please feel free to give any feedback, and it's very welcome. And let's all be the new beginning to a new wave against colorism.
Yeah.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.